Welcome to the Struggle Series podcast with your host, Anthony Corelli.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Struggle Series podcast. I am your host, Anthony, and I hope all of you had an amazing Thanksgiving like I did. Been away for a little while, putting together a story and, of course, celebrating with the family. And as we get ready for Christmas, I definitely wanted to squeeze in this episode. And we're going to try to do another one by the end of the month as well to give you the content that we promised you to give you. Tonight's episode is going to be one that, again, continues on our theme of educating you while at the same time entertaining you. If you are new to the podcast or have stumbled upon this, or maybe you haven't been here for a while, we just want to kind of update you on the format. So in the past, this podcast was originally created to tell the stories within the book series entitled The Struggle Series. And we have made it through all of the first 3 books of the Struggle Series that are published. And then we actually recorded the 4th saga in the Struggle Series, and I kind of wrote it as we went. And that one's entitled The Cabal. You can go back to the beginning of this podcast and listen to all of those stories in their entirety, narrated by me. And we kind of sprinkled in some kind of spooky stories and different content in between. Now, because we merged the other podcast, the Deliverance Project, into this one, we've kind of been in the process of kind of sorting out what that would look like. What we have done is we have launched what we're calling Season 1 because it's a brand new beginning, even though you can still go back and listen to all those other stories. Tonight will be Season 1, Episode 2 of the new format, where we tell stories that kind of have a spooky twist, but they're also very educational if you're listening on how demons work, how spiritual warfare works, and how you could find yourself wrapped up in this mess. Now, we are still willing to work with you, pray with you, whatever we were doing on the Deliverance Project. If you happen to have listened to that and been directed over here, we would love to hear your story, and we would love to pray with you if you feel that you are in the midst of spiritual warfare. And you can reach out to us at the Struggle Series Podcast at gmail.com. Just send us a message there, and we would love to get back with you and help you any way we can. So what we want to do is jump right to tonight's episode. And this episode is entitled The Deceiver. Have you ever met someone who was so charming, charismatic, and magnetic that you're instantly enamored by their presence? The type of person that you feel knows you, even though you just met. The type of person that makes you feel important and valuable. The type of person that seems larger than life. In reality, there are people in the world who are gifted with the aforementioned gifts. They have a great heart, love people, and enjoy doing life with everyone they meet. Unfortunately, there are people who have learned to use those gifts for nefarious purposes. Even scarier, there are some people who have surrendered themselves to a demonic presence. Demons are master deceivers, master manipulators, and master strategists. Most, if not all of us, have met one of these demon-possessed deceivers who are set on obtaining power over others for destructive purposes. Fortunately, there are signs that indicate that you are dealing with a non-human force. We must learn to recognize the signs and protect ourselves by seeking the guidance of the Holy Spirit. Mark and Mandy were a young couple starting their lives together. They had been married for 6 weeks and seemed to have the world in the palm of their hands. Mark had an amazing job and made enough money to easily give Mandy the life she had always dreamt of. They had decided that their first item on the list was to purchase a new home. The second was to start a family. The future could not be brighter. Today was a Saturday, and it was house hunting day. The couple had toured several homes with their realtor, but nothing had caught their attention. The realtor had suggested that they look at a brand new home. So today, they headed to a new neighborhood that was under construction. The couple parked in a parking lot in the spot next to their realtor. The couple looked around to see several houses that were under construction. Mark and Mandy caught each other scowling at the thought of living in a neighborhood with so much construction in process. The realtor caught on to the vibe and said, I know that moving into a new community seems unbearable due to all of the chaos. I can assure you that these houses will all be built before you know it. Then it's just like any other neighborhood. The only difference is you can be part of crafting your dream home here. Plus, you will be the first to live there. It will be all yours. So the history of the house will be created by you. This lifted their spirits. Mark said, Well, it doesn't hurt to take a look. Mandy agreed, and they held hands as they walked into the sales office. There was a sign on the welcome desk that said, We are currently out in the community showing a property to another customer. Please feel free to tour our models. The realtor explained that this is a blessing. She said, We can tour the models without the pressure of a salesperson. Most of the time they're okay, but sometimes they can be very high pressure. Let's take our time and really enjoy this experience. There are 4 models to look at on site. They may have more models available, but we will have a good idea of what they offer when we are done. As they walked out of the sales office and down the sidewalk to the models, the realtor felt a chill run up her spine. Shelley was a Christian woman who wore her faith on her sleeve. She believed in spirits and spiritual warfare and had her share of paranormal experiences. She had felt this feeling before. In her mind, there was evil here. Mark, who was walking ahead of her, turned to notice her hesitation. He said, Is everything all right? She replied, I'm not sure. I don't know if you two are believers in spiritual warfare, but I sense evil around here somewhere. Mark said, Well, that's not a good way to sell us a house. Shelley said, Oh, I don't think it's attached to a house. These are new houses. So even if you believe in ghosts, they wouldn't be here. This feels more like a demon is lurking around. The Bible says that the enemy prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he shall devour. It seems more like that. Mandy chimed in. We don't really believe in that stuff, so we're not worried. I am actually in awe of the entryways of these homes. They feel so grand. This is the type of porch that we need. Even if this is built on some sort of ancient burial ground, we'll ignore all that stuff. We don't believe in ghosts, so we'll be fine. Shelley said, Well, I don't feel it anymore, so let's start at the far model and work our way back. The couple agreed and turned to walk down the sidewalk. Shelley grabbed a cross around her neck and kissed it as she said a silent prayer. It was a prayer asking God for protection. She didn't think there was a demon. She knew there was a demon nearby. Mark and Mandy opened the front door of the home at the end of the cul-de-sac. Mandy was enamored with the grand entry, but once she saw the inside of the house, her breath left her body. This house was beautiful. As the couple toured the home, they looked for something they didn't like. They couldn't find it. Everything from the flooring to the kitchen island to the tile work was perfect. They looked at each other and, without speaking, they knew this was the one. Of course, they toured the other 3 houses, which were beautiful. Still, the first house was the one they had to have. They made their way back to the sales office, which was still unoccupied. The realtor found a price sheet for the model they were looking for. They saw the base price, which was well within their budget. The realtor explained that if they wanted their home to look like the model, the price would be drastically different. She explained that they build the models with all the upgrades so that you are drawn into the property. Shelley informed them that most people do not do the upgrades because the price can grow $80,000 or more. Mark said, We're approved for $1.5 million. If the base price is $850,000, we should be okay. We want them to build us that exact house. Shelley did not show it, but she smiled inside. If they ended up paying $1 million for this home, she would receive 2% from the builder for bringing them in. This would be a nice commission for doing very little work. The bulk of the paperwork would be done by the sales associate. Mandy said, I can't believe how clean this office is. The models are spotless, but this office is immaculate. Shelley said, yes, they pay a company to keep them looking good. But before we talk to the sales associate, let's discuss the price. There really isn't any bargaining on the price. You will just pay what they charge. What we can do is ask if they have any incentives. The excitement was palpable. What they didn't notice was that a man had pulled up in an older model sedan. Nobody would have guessed that this was their salesman. Most sales associates drive very expensive cars. This car was too old for a man who was trying to portray an image. What he lacked in the car department, he made up in appearance. He was dressed to the nines. He was a dark-skinned man with a perfect complexion and the whitest teeth a person could possess. His smile brought warmth that words could not describe. When he walked into the office, his African accent calmed their nerves, except for Shelley. She felt a feeling of dread from head to toe. Something in her spirit told her that this man was not what he seemed. Mark and Mandy did not notice. In fact, they were drawn to him. When he introduced himself as David, both Mark and Mandy knew they would never forget that name. David stuck his hand out to shake Shelley's hand, but she acted as if she didn't see him reach for her and started walking towards his office. As she walked, she said, David, I think you have some motivated buyers here, so we can sit down and see if your company will offer us enough incentives to get this deal done. Mark made eye contact with Mandy as if to say, Did you see that? It was obvious that she did not want to interact with David. Mandy thought to herself, This man is so nice. Why would she not shake his hand? She better not mess this up with her religious nonsense. David is way too handsome to be a bad man. As they sat in the office, David began logging into his computer. Shelley looked out of the corner of her eye and saw a spider run across the floor. It was huge. She jumped and took a deep breath. Mark saw it too. He would not consider himself arachnophobic, but this spider did make him flinch. Mandy said, What is up with you two? Mark said, Sorry, that was just a huge spider that went under the desk. David, without taking his eyes off the screen, said, When you start churning up the dirt, sometimes we disturb a few insects. It usually takes a few months or so to get rid of them. Mark thought to himself, This is not a good selling point, but we can always get an exterminator to spray our house before we move in. As David began to go over the number of the base price, Mark said, Let's just cut to the chase. We don't care about the base price. Do you have a lot available that would accommodate us building the exact same home as the model? David said, Let me see. He typed for about 2 solid minutes as the three sat silent. He finally spoke up and said, There are 3 lots that could accommodate that floor plan. I mean no disrespect, Mark, but are you sure you want all those upgrades? That will increase the price substantially. Mark did not hesitate. Oh, we could afford it, David. We want what we want, and we can make it happen. Before anyone realized, Mark and David were talking about sports, cars, and Mark's career. David seemed to know just how to speak Mark's language. The entire time they were talking, Mandy found herself smitten with David. She loved Mark more than she had ever loved anybody. This attraction to David was different. It was carnal. Shelley was praying under her breath. She could feel the evil that was permeating from David's body. As she prayed, she felt something run across her toes. She looked down to see a scorpion running under the desk. She screamed as she jumped up. David looked at her and said, What is wrong, my dear Shelley? She hated that he called her my dear. She was feeling severe anxiety. She shouted, I just had a scorpion run over my foot. In fact, look at all these bugs. Where are they coming from? Mark and Mandy both looked to see no less than 20 diverse types of bugs run under David's desk. Shelley said, What is under that desk? They must be attracted to something. Maybe it's your garbage can. David laughed in a way that was both sinister and subtle. Shelley knew exactly what she was dealing with. She said, We just told you that there are dozens of bugs running around here, and you didn't even flinch. What is up with that, David? He grew even calmer. He said, I'm not afraid of a few bugs. I'm here to help my customers find their dream home. Shelley felt evil in his glare. He was calm on the outside, but he was seething on the inside. She grabbed her cross and started to rub it between her fingers. She said, I know what you are, David. You could pretend all you want. I know who you serve. Mandy jumped up and said, Shelley, that's enough. We told you we don't believe in all that religious mumbo jumbo. Don't insult David when he's trying to help us. It's just a pest control problem. Not everything that is uncomfortable requires religion. Shelley said, I can't tell you two what to do, but if I were you, I would walk out that door with me. This man is not what he seems. Mandy said, That's it. You're fired. Get out of here. I don't want your help. We can do this without you, right, David? David feigned humility and simply replied, Yes, you will not need a realtor to complete this process. Shelley did not say another word. She simply walked to the door. She dusted the dust off her shoes as she had read in the Bible. She did not want to take anything home with her. She sat in her car for a few minutes and prayed for Mark and Mandy. She also prayed that she would be protected. Then she drove away. As Mark and Mandy continued the process, Mark noticed that David made eye contact with Mandy in a way that was slightly uncomfortable. As he looked at David, he saw a spider crawl from David's shoulder towards his back. Mark thought about saying something, but David didn't seem to care. As if he sensed Mark's discomfort, David moved his attention back to the concerned husband. Soon, all thoughts of bugs, Shelley, and religion were forgotten. Within about 2 hours, Mark was writing a check for the earnest money required. David explained that they had a home that was partially built, but was early enough in the process to add all upgrades. In 3 months, Mandy's dream home would be complete. David shook Mandy's hand first as he stared deep into her eyes. She felt an energy pulse through her body. She melted at his touch. David then shook Mark's hand firmly and said, Don't worry, Mark. I can see how much she loves this home. I'll be on top of this deal. I will make sure Mandy has her happily ever after. If Mark was honest, he felt a chill up his spine. He wondered if that is what Shelley felt. Something was not right. He shook it off, knowing that in a few months there would be no need to interact with David. No surprise, the couple fought all the way home. Mandy adamantly denied the interaction with David, but in the depths of her soul, she wanted David. She would never admit it, but Mark was right to be concerned. The next 3 months were filled with several unexplained paranormal events in their apartment. Mark was haunted by terrifying nightmares. Mandy was haunted by explicit dreams of David. Lights would flicker off and on. Objects would disappear and reappear days later in the spot that was searched several times. The last couple of nights had been straight out of a horror movie. Mark had woken up to see a shadow being standing at the foot of the bed. The being had begun choking him when Mandy woke up. She could not see the entity, but she could see Mark struggling to breathe. She had dismissed it as sleep paralysis, but she knew that was a lie. She saw Mark's eyes wide open and his hands moving as if they were trying to remove the invisible hands that were wrapped around his neck. Mandy had to dismiss what she saw because she was enjoying the vivid dreams she had about David. How could she be so attracted to a man she had only just met? She had found reasons to call David throughout the process, and he seductively drew her closer each time. Mark had gone from an unbeliever to firmly understanding that Shelley may have been right. The day of the closing went smoothly, except for Mark's desire to get out of the room before David's evil could do any more damage. Mark and Mandy were scheduled to move in that weekend. The day before the move in, Mark left work early. He had to see someone. It was important. He walked into the realty office and asked to see Shelley. When she came out, she said, "I don't want you here. You must leave." Mark said, "Please, I just need to have a few minutes of your time. I must speak to you. You were right about David." Against Shelley's better judgment, she walked Mark back to her office. As she sat down, she said, "I assume you're having the nightmares too? I'm sure it's paranormal hell at your place, just like mine." Mark said, "How did you know?" "I tried to tell you, Mark. You wouldn't listen. I hate to say this, but that man has embedded himself into your lives. Or should I say that demon has embedded itself into your lives." "Is that what it is? A demon?" "I'm afraid so. It's haunting me too. I can't seem to shake it. I've had demons try to mess with me in the past. I've prayed and they've gone away. This is different. I can't seem to shake it. I even have the ladies at my church praying for me." Mark sat quietly as if he was already defeated. He then spoke. "No matter how hard I try to get Mandy to see what this is, she refuses to see it. She defends him every time. I kick myself for not walking out of there. I saw how she looked at him and how he looked at her. It was like a lion looking at a wounded animal. I looked at her phone. She has called him way too many times for it to be just about the house. Now I have some sort of shadow being try to strangle me in my own bed. What do I do?" Shelley said, "You must pray. You must give your life to Jesus. This is the only way you can find relief." "What if she doesn't want to do that?" "You must take care of yourself first before you can take care of her. It's like the oxygen mask in the airplane thing. You must put your mask on before you can help others. Does that make sense?" Mark said yes. Shelley tried to continue, but she felt a cold permeating the room. She said, "Do you feel that? It just got really cold in here." Mark answered, "Yes, what is that?" Just then, a car traveling well over 70 miles an hour left the road. It flew through the parking lot and crashed into the building, right into Shelley's first floor office. Mark and Shelley did not die instantly. They both died on scene, but it was an excruciating death for the both of them. Mandy had no choice but to move into the house. After all, the movers were scheduled and the boxes were packed. Also, the lease was up at their apartment. She was thankful that David took the time that weekend to help her with the move and to simply be there for her in her time of need. Mandy was grateful that Mark had a huge life insurance policy and a large stock portfolio. She would be able to pay off the house and live comfortably with her salary alone. David, of course, attended the funeral. Each person made their way up to the open casket to pay their respects. Mark's body had been mangled, but the funeral home had made his face look presentable. When David made his way to the front, he leaned over into the casket. He whispered, "I told you that I would make sure that Mandy has her happily ever after." David changed his face to show the crowd that he was upset about Mark's death. He wasn't. It wasn't long before David moved into Mandy's home. He was now driving Mark's car. No need for that old sedan anymore. Many of her friends said that it was too soon. Mandy didn't care. She finally had what she wanted. David. She didn't realize that this was not David. This was a demon. And she was in its grip. So, there you have it. The name of that story is entitled The Deceiver, and I hope that you can see that it is exactly what can happen to us if we're not careful. You see, many people that will find this podcast, or maybe people that you know, will say that these things don't happen, or that this is just a embellished story to get people to be afraid of these fake demons so that I can guide you towards my religion. And that could not be farther from the truth. If you know me, or if you've listened to me for quite a while, I hate religion. I can't stand it. I want people to have a relationship with Jesus because demons are real. And as the Bible says, they are out to steal, kill, and destroy. And so I want you to have relief from that. And the only relief you could find is through Jesus Christ. But take it a little farther. When you look at this story, I bet that this person named David in this story reminds you of somebody that you've interacted with. You see, I want you to take your mind to a place that maybe you don't like to go. But we've watched movies like The Exorcist or The Exorcism of Emily Rose or so many other different movies where we see somebody can be possessed. What I don't like about those movies, and they are entertaining, I'm not saying that, but what I don't like is they usually don't show the person until the possession is at the verge of death. They don't show how somebody can be either influenced, oppressed, or possessed by a demon and what that actually looks like in real life. Because remember, when a demon is possessing you, it doesn't want anybody else to know it's there. And so people around you would just see glimpses of you, or the demon will kind of inherit or mimic your personality. So people would think they were talking to you. And so if you think about like when you've met somebody and you're like, there's just something not right about that person. Or maybe you've known somebody and you haven't seen them in a while and you run into them and they're like a different person entirely. Most of us won't stop and go, is this person under the influence of a demon? We blame things like substance abuse or mental illness or life circumstances, or the person just became a jerk or whatever the case may be. And maybe some of those things are true, but it does not mean that there's not a demon behind the veil trying to destroy us. I want you to think of how this story progressed to where this David had rubbed off on Mandy in such a way that it literally took her from her dream home, her dream marriage, her dream husband to wanting him in the blink of an eye. That's not just attraction, that's not just lust. There are beings that can find a way to communicate with you in a way that makes you vulnerable. And that's what happened here. And Mark was doing so much to just buy this house that he wanted, and that, he could maybe make the excuse that he wanted to make his wife happy, that even when he saw or felt that there was something wrong, he just continued. He didn't pull the plug. And if he would have, he might have saved himself a lot of trouble. Now, would he have broken the spell that David was trying to put on Mandy? Maybe not. She might have went back to David and he may have never known, but at least it would have been a valiant effort. And so I want you to take that and apply that into your real life. I'm going to tell you a brief story. Just this last week, prior to recording this, and if you know us, my wife, Melissa, and we own a small business. That's kind of how we pay the bills. And so I had hired a woman who we weren't sure about, but we needed somebody desperately. And she was kind of a friend of a friend. And we said we'd give her a chance. We hadn't met her, so we hadn't really done a formal interview, but it was kind of one of those things. We'll come and see what we do. We'll give it a couple of weeks, try it out, and then we'll let you know if you're going to work out. Well, this person, it took us about a week, but we realized she wasn't going to work out. She was always on her phone. She even disclosed to one of our other employees that she was cheating on her husband. And so I kind of just waited till the end of the week, because we had so much going on for the holidays and such, that I just wanted to make sure that I had a good time to just kind of chat with her and say, hey, this isn't working out. And when I did that, um, this person, uh, they, there was just that feeling you get, just like in the story. Let me put it that way. And it was just a few days later that Melissa and I were sitting on the couch watching actual sporting event. So it wasn't a scary movie or anything like that. And I heard a growl that seemed like it came right from the front porch, right by the window on our porch. And in the matter of about 10 minutes, I could feel the assault on my soul from a spirit. And when I say an assault, I mean, my first thoughts were that I was maybe having low blood sugar or maybe getting a migraine or even an aneurysm. So there was an initial fear because there was a physical kind of wave that came over me. It was like I was walking through water or I was underwater. I was dizzy. I tried to stand up and felt like I was going to fall. And it maybe took me 15 minutes to realize that this was demonic. And so we prayed all night, had a very bad night, nightmares, so on and so forth. And I couldn't prove it. I definitely could not, take it to court and win in a court of law because there's no evidence. But in my spirit, I believe that this young woman is probably some sort of a witch. And when I fired her, which I guess put her in a bad spot because she needs money desperately. And, she thought she had found the gravy train. I believe she put a curse on us and we had to pray to break that. Um, and so when you meet people, there are demons that could be infesting somebody that have given these people power to call on them just well I don't want to say just like, but in a similar fashion that we call on God in prayer, they call on their demons in summoning rituals to kind of convince them to help put a curse on somebody or to even in this case even a curse unto death in the story that we just heard. So I want you to think about who you interact with, how you trust your gut or what people call your gut, but what I would believe maybe is the spirit if you were a Christian telling you to get out of a situation. I think if I can go back and really learn a lesson from this, number one, definitely will never hire anybody again without a pretty extensive interview. I don't care if they come friend of a friend. And number two, I should have let the person go sooner because I think it it possibly in my selfishness of not wanting to be shorthanded before the weekend, I may have contributed to this demonic entity gaining more interest. I want you to think of this, and I really mean this. Some of you won't believe me, but there are times where even shaking somebody's hand is a bad idea. And touch, you know, can be one thing. That's not what I'm saying, but shaking hands is an agreement. And demons cannot have access to your life until you let them in, till you give them some sort of permission. And shaking hands could be a permission if you're not careful. So if you happen to know somebody who's very evil, very maybe witchy, kind of, if you will, or occultish, maybe think about not shaking their hand because you don't know their motives against you. Many people will present themselves to be something they're not. I'm going to take this even farther. I would say that if you took 100% of the Christian churches in this nation, now I'm just speak for the United States, I would guess anywhere in the vicinity of 85 to 90% or higher probably has an active witch or witches that are in the church trying to infiltrate for demonic purposes. And those of you who listen, I'm not trying to pick a fight on the term witch. You can talk to me about white witches and black witches and that type of thing. I'm speaking of people with bad intentions who do not want to become Christians, but are there for the purposes of destruction. And so, pastors and church members alike, you really need to trust the Spirit when the Spirit is telling you, stay away from this person or something is not right here. because that's a protective mechanism if you want to look at it psychologically. But if it is a protective voice in the spirit realm that is telling you, do not engage because we don't want you making an agreement that will cause you harm. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning into the Struggle Series podcast. This podcast is written and produced by me, Anthony Corelli. Shout out to Todd Kazinka at Todd K Voiceovers for the voiceover work and the music. We really appreciate that. Again, if you'd like to contact us, you could reach us at the Struggle Series podcast at gmail.com. You could also find us on our website at thestruggleseries.com. Thanks again for tuning in. May God bless you and bring you peace. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Struggle Series podcast. Please like, subscribe, and tell a friend. We will see you next time.